All right,
Okay,
we're
all
recording
right,
right now, so
excellent.
cool.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to this information session on the UNC Economics and Croatia program. This is a faculty-led program led by myself, and of course, what's really nice about it is we keep the groups really small. What you see here are the 16 students that joined me back in the summer of 2019. Actually, our dates should be 2021, I just realized.
Oh,
on this
sorry about
particular.
that.
And we're going to give you an overview of the program, and then to the students who were actually part of this study group are with us today, and they'll be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the student experience. But again, if you want to go ahead, Oliver.
Sure.
So my name's Rita Balaban once again. This is a picture. I love this picture because that's how I feel when I'm in Croatia all the time. Just a big smile on my face, beautiful people, beautiful country. Here I am sitting at the Krka National Falls, which is just less than an hour drive from Split, which will be the home city of our study abroad. And joining me today in hosting this info session is Oliver Jones. I'll let you say.
Hi. Yeah, of course. So my name's Oliver Jones. I'm a study abroad advisor at the office. I cover a lot of different countries and regions, but the main one for us today would be Eastern Europe. So if you're interested in any programs in this part of the world, Croatia, Austria, Bosnia and Herzegovina, etc., I would be the best contact for that. So,
Excellent.
all right.
Yeah. So this particular program, the questions come up, what's the value of studying abroad? And I think any student, including myself, I remember fondly, I guess it's probably 30 years ago that I spent my summer abroad when I was in college, is just the learning that goes on that you're just not going to get here in a UNC classroom. The experience to new cultures, the friendships that you will build both with, your cohort that joins you, as well as if you're open-minded, you can meet the locals too. In fact, as part of the program, I make sure that the students go out and interview some of the locals as part of the experience. So there is fabulous learning opportunities that you just can't get in the classroom. And any of you that have traveled abroad, I think you can understand what I'm referring to. But I think it's just another experience to be settled in one location for 5 to 6 weeks. You feel more like a local than you do a tourist. So I really encourage you, if this program doesn't interest you, to definitely study abroad. But I want to talk about why Croatia. For one thing, this is obviously an opportunity for you to advance in your major, the economics major, and not only to study economics abroad, but to study it in Eastern Europe, which presents a very different cultural experience than what you'll see in some of the other programs that we offer in Europe. Our other programs are predominantly in the UK, Ireland, Scandinavia, and that Western Europe and Northern Europe is a different experience than what you're going to find in the Balkans. Croatia as a country is less than 30 years old, and it presents a really great opportunity to engage and learn more about its economic transition and its eventual ascension into the EU. By the way, little history pop quiz here. What country was Croatia a part of before it declared its independence?
Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia, excellent. Which, if you're a sports fan, there's a lot of amazing basketball players, soccer players that have come out of the former Yugoslavia. Doncic, probably the best player in college basketball today. Garza, he's of Bosnian heritage. Croatians, of course, if you have familiarity with World Cup soccer, you know that they were in the finals a couple of years ago. Croatia was in the finals a couple of years ago. So it's really an interesting opportunity to engage with a country that's relatively young and to learn more about the transition that it has gone through as a country and its eventual ascension into the EU, which happened several years back, and its eventual ascension into the Eurozone, which should be happening here in the next year or two. The other interesting aspect that I find why Croatia is the exposure to the European sports model. As economics students, you study what happens in America and you talk about American institutions. And of course, you know, when we talk about institutions, we know that they heavily influence the behavior and the outcomes of the participants. So in sports economics, you know, we look at the institution of pro sports, collegiate sports, amateur sports, if you will. But what we see is that how things are done in Europe are very different than how they're done in the US. And what we can learn from this is how the institutions, the rules, the policies that are put in place affect individual behavior. Okay, so it gives you a direct exposure to the European sports model, and which is again fundamentally different than the US. And the one thing about Croatia is its economy is heavily driven by tourism. And we're going to see the role that sports tourism plays in the Croatian economy. In fact, we take a nice little excursion to the northern part of the country where we are exposed directly to the role that sports tourism plays in that particular region of the country. Croatians are passionate. They're proud of their sports teams and superstars. You think, you know, things might get crazy on UNC's campus when, you know, there's a big game. The Croatians as a country are super, super passionate anytime their national teams are competing, or even if it's an individual sports athlete, an individual athlete, like in tennis, they have a lot of good tennis players as well, competing in a major championship or a major tournament. There's a lot of everything shuts down and let's watch our beloved country man or woman. And so, you know, as a country, they're very passionate about sports. It provides a very interesting country, very different perspective than what we have you know, experienced here in the US and what you might experience in the rest of Europe. And then just one other thing, you know, I think, you know, you may not know a whole lot about Croatia. Maybe you say, oh, you know, I remember, yeah, their World Cup team was in the championship a couple of years ago. But I think what's really interesting too is that they have success not only in soccer, but basketball, handball, water polo, alpine skiing, tennis. And Split itself, where we will be located, is the birthplace of a water sport known as Pitzigen, which is very popular on the beautiful beaches there in and around Split. Go ahead, Oliver.
Sure.
So a little bit of academic overview, because besides going to beaches and getting engaged in the sporting culture and the cultural activities that are there as well, is you will be taking two courses. I'll give you a quick overview here and talk about a little bit more detail in the next couple slides. But one of the courses is taught by myself. It's a course I offer here on UNC's campus called the Economics of Sports. But what I add to that is there are more Croatian examples, more European integration, and of course the sports tourism part, which I do not introduce in the course that I teach here on campus. You'll get UNC credit for it, not just UNC credit, but credit towards your major in economics. So this is a 400 level course in which you'll get 3 of those credits needed towards the econ degree. The other course is called European Economic Integration, and this is taught by a professor from the University of Split. His name is Professor Dražen Dorado, and Professor Dorado, he teaches this course about not only Europe, how it came together to form the EU, but also gives you an idea about the different roles of how Croatia has had to adapt as it has integrated into the EU. That particular course, you're going to receive also credit towards the major. Okay, so you'll receive those 3 credits that will count towards the econ major, but it's considered transfer credit. So these credits, correct me, Oliver, if I'm wrong, these particular credits do not count towards your GPA. Okay, although the course I teach, the Econ of Sports one, will be included in your GPA. So you want to get a C or better so that it transfers and does count towards your econ major. I should add that. Just because you took it and got a D doesn't mean it counts towards the major. You got to, you know how it works. You got to get that C or better for it to count towards the econ degree. But the transfer credit, we want to bring that to your attention because some of you may be transfer students. and there are only so many credits that you can take outside of the UNC system that will count towards your econ degree. Okay, and it's
Yeah.
depending on whether you're doing the BS or the BA, that will differ. Do you want to add anything there, Oliver?
Yeah, you pretty much hit all the marks. You're absolutely right. There's only a couple small changes that have happened with credit transfer just recently in the study abroad office. Rita's absolutely right. This will count back as TREQ credit. The TREC credit that you get from study abroad is a little bit different from the TREC credit that you would get if you're a transfer student or from like a community college or moving into UNC as a transfer student. So the main two rules to really know when you're trying to assess the number of transfer hours that you have, if you're a transfer student with a high number of hours that have transferred in, the only thing that you really need to know is two rules effectively. You need to do at least 45 credit hours here in Chapel Hill, and you need to do at least 50% of your major classes in Chapel Hill as well. So for example, if the econ major has 10 courses, then you would need to do at least 5 in Chapel Hill. So the course that you would take with Rita Balaban would count as a course with UNC. It's taught by a UNC professor. It would impact your UNC GPA. You'd get UNC graded credit for it. So that wouldn't necessarily count toward those extra classes. But the European Economic Integration course, just because it's taught by a professor outside of UNC, as long as you're not interfering with, you're doing at least half of your major in Chapel Hill with UNC professors, you should be good to go. The only change as well is, Rita's absolutely right, it won't impact your UNC GPA if you earn, as long as you pass the course, it'll transfer back successfully as transfer credit. If you earn a C- or lower, it will transfer back as a failing grade though. So a little bit of extra motivation to pass the course while you're abroad. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much everything. You hit all the marks, Rita.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to,
Sure.
before we move on to the next slide, is you're taking 2 courses. You might say, holy heck, when am I going to enjoy the beaches and the wonderful aspects of Croatia? We started, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian and Jason, I think we would start my course at like 10 in the morning. It'd be over at 11:30. Professor Dorado would go from 12 to 1:30. So you have the afternoon to do things, and of course the evenings to study and prepare for classes, and you're wide open on the weekends. Okay, so Croatia's got lots of close destinations in which you can do little jaunts and travel. And we too do our own cultural excursions, about 1 a week throughout the semester. So there are certain afternoons where we might go and visit a museum or go to a beautiful fortress up on a hill. For you Game of Thrones fans, you may recognize it, the Fortress of Cleese, and learn a little bit about the history of that fortress and its role in Split's history. So I want to make sure you understand that it's basically equivalent to taking a summer course, summer session at UNC. It's about 5.5 weeks long. Okay.
Very nice.
All right. So just, I did actually say more than probably I wanted to already, not that I wanted to, but I said a little bit more about the economics of sports class earlier than I intended, but here's a description of the course itself. So I'll just go ahead and read it. This is just like what you're seeing, like I said, in your 400 level courses at UNC. You're using your Econ 410, your micro theory, and your Econ 400, okay, your econometric stats course, to explore similarities and difference between American and European sports leagues. Topics we look at are antitrust issues. So it's a little bit of law in economics. What can we do? What can't we do? How does that affect our behavior? Competitive balance outcomes. You have an objective. You want to create a product that's going to get people tuned in and interested. So competitive balance is something that matters. You would think, to draw people's interest into the sporting community. What sort of policies work, what don't work, or do fans even care about competitive balance? So we look at that. Salary determination. So why do our pro athletes make so much? Why do the women pro athletes make so much less, right, than their male counterparts? We look at public finance aspects of sports. What role can sports play in local economic development? So a lot of good economic areas that we touch on. And of course, we give you a chance to dig your hands into some data and test some of these theories. That's my course. You can go ahead, Oliver.
Sure.
The next course is Professor Dorado's course on European economic integration. And again, he too is covering intermediate type macro or micro, excuse me. There is some macro theory in there. You don't have to know Econ 420. okay? But there's some macro theory in there to explore the effects of economic integration in the European context. So extremely interesting. You're talking, I should know this, maybe Jason and Brian do, but how many countries are in the EU? Is it like 30, 32, roughly? Do you guys remember?
26 or 27, I thought.
26 or 27, okay.
I could
All these independent nations, right, coordinating under an agreement known as an agreement on European integration. And so, how do we make this work? You're giving up some of your sovereignty to get involved with this. So he goes into the history of this integration, why they felt it was important in this part of the world, institutional legal aspects of the EU, trade integration, customs unions, right? What kind of trade will we have? Will we have freedom of labor? Freedom of, or not freedom, but use of common currency. He looks at a lot of these really interesting issues. And of course, there's some papers to be read, some empirical analysis that you will look at some empirical results, some theoretical predictions to see what the impact of the expected benefits are of economic integration. And of course,
Sorry.
okay, I'll sign it up or finish here. And of course, keeping in mind that Croatia as a new country in roughly about 25 years took that stance from in 1991, getting its independence to about, I think it was about 5-6 years ago now, becoming a member of the EU. All right, thank you, Oliver.
Sure thing. All right, I'll give you a little bit of information about the logistics of the program as well as applying. So here you can see just a quick breakdown of the program costs and the billing for it. So here, there's two numbers that you really need to look at. There's the cashier billed expenses as well as the out-of-pocket expenses. This comes from our summer 2021. There might be some small updates to this. Most notably, I would think the program costs, the housing might change a little bit, just depending on what summer 2021 is going to look like. But this is a relatively accurate estimate of what you can kind of expect to pay for the program. So the cashier billed expenses, that 5,301 unit, that's going to be what is billed to your UNC student account. And that's going to include the 925 study abroad administrative fee that's applied to all study abroad students, the tuition and fees for the program, as well as the program costs. I believe that's the housing and extra expenses associated with the program. And then there's the GeoBlue health insurance as well, that all students are automatically enrolled in for study abroad programs. The out-of-pocket expenses, they aren't going to be billed to you, but you can, we want you to kind of have them on your radar from the get-go when you're thinking about budgeting for the program. So this is going to be the $50 application fee to apply, the airfare, which is an estimate. Honestly, I could see you paying quite a bit less than $1,500 to fly to Croatia, but we'd rather have a conservative estimate just to, kind of make sure. As well as passport costs. If you already have a passport, then you've saved $145 there. There's also a meals estimate and personal expenses, like any trinkets or souvenirs or independent travel that you'd want to do on the program. These would all fall into out-of-pocket expenses. So they won't be billed to you, but we just kind of want you to make you aware of them so you're thinking about accurately budgeting from the get-go. So a little bit about funding and scholarships as well. So funding for a study abroad program can come from a variety of sources. It can come from yourself and your own fundraising. It can come from parents or other support networks. There's financial aid that's available as well, but the way that federal financial aid typically works with students, if you do receive financial aid for your time at UNC, usually the aid that you normally receive during semester programs will be applied to the spring and fall semester study abroad programs. Most of the financial aid that's available for summer programs are typically in the form of loans, which is just something I want to make you aware of from the get-go. Some students are averse to taking out loans. Other students are more open to taking out a loan, and this is a pretty once-in-a-lifetime experience. So I wouldn't necessarily discourage you from taking out a loan if this is something that would make or break the trip for you. With the study abroad office as well, we have our own scholarships, and we've recently revamped this to make it a little bit easier to apply to and to have on your radar. So when you go into Heals Abroad, the portal where you'll end up applying to the program, as part of the application to UNC Economics in Croatia, you'll see a couple of questionnaires, and these are going to be the common scholarship applications through our office. So our office has the common application for study abroad office scholarships. It doesn't really take more than 15-20 minutes to complete. There's just a couple short answer questions in there. And if you end up applying to it and submitting it as part of your application, you'll automatically be considered for all of the scholarships that are available through our office. You can also research other scholarships and funding sources too. We have a costs and funding section on our website, so you can find a lot of more information about scholarships that are available through UNC as well as external sources. Definitely check that page out on our website. It's a really good resource for this kind of stuff. So. Okay, a little bit about how to apply as well. First things first, I'd go to healsabroad.unc.edu or our study abroad website, studyabroad.unc.edu, and you can find Heals Abroad from there. And this is going to be your main program database where you'll find the brochure for the application, and you can start the application from there as well. The only eligibility requirements, I believe you need a 3.0 GPA at the time of the application, and the prerequisites for the course would be Econ 400 and Econ 410.
Actually, Oliver,
yeah.
it's a 2.5 for this program.
2.5. Oh, really? Oh, sorry about that.
Or I should have thought that earlier. My fault.
No worries, no worries. Okay, 2.5 GPA at the time of the application is the requirement for eligibility. Is the Econ 400 and 410 requirement still there, Rita?
Yes, and that's the biggest thing. If you have a C or better in those courses, you're going to be able to handle it. So that's why we have the 2.5 versus the 3.0.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense. Your applications, they're open right now for summer 2021, actually, so you could apply today if you'd like. And the applications are due on February 10th, 2021. I will say with the applications to this program, they're not operated on a rolling basis, so I would take your time with the application, really thoroughly think through, and identify other programs that you're interested in. And if Econ in Croatia is your top choice, absolutely make an application for it, but take your time with it too. There's no reason to get it in today versus February 9th or February 10th. As long as you submit it by the 10th deadline, you should be okay. You'll receive acceptance notifications at the beginning of March. So after you submit the application on February 10th, I'll be reviewing applications with Rita, and we'll be making our admissions decisions, and we'll release those decisions in the beginning of March usually. And if you're accepted to the program and decide to commit to it, our pre-departure orientation and prep for the program will take place in April as well. So. All right, well, we'll leave it there for questions. I'm sure there are some. So we'll give the floor to you. I'd also love to hear a little bit about Brian and Jason's experience too, if you had anything in particular to share.
I mean, I guess Brian and I can just say like I guess our overall like what we did on the trip, like basically each weekend we traveled to like a different part of the country. That was pretty cool, I would say. And I think another big part I've noticed about this trip is they've had this program twice, right, Professor Balaban? And I feel like I've noticed on both trips that like the students have always been really connected. And I don't know if that's something about like econ students, but that's definitely something I've noticed about this program.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a pretty unique experience too, just because you're going with, whether is it 16 this year as well, Professor Bellman?
15 or 16.
Okay. Yeah. So like, and you're going to class every day with them, and then you're traveling all across the country with them. I know Jason went to, Jason, where'd you go again? Like one weekend you went to like a totally different country, right? Denmark.
One weekend I went to Copenhagen in Denmark.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So, and that weekend we went to Vis, which was another island in Croatia, and it's just like insane. Like the views there are just unreal. There's just like so much you can do and so much to explore. And I honestly never left the country. I went to like every island and tried to explore as much as I could, and it was a lot of fun. But also like I think the classes too were a lot more interesting than I even initially thought. I think the sports management class is just like or sports economics and sports class was just so interesting. Like it was really cool. We got to do a project at the end, and we did ours on the NBA. I think Jason did his on women's soccer, and
no, we did MLB, but
MLB. Okay, I think you wanted to do women's soccer though, right? Like
yeah.
I think ended up but yeah, it was super cool, and I think it's just like something unique that you can't really get anywhere else. And I don't even know if you could get that in another abroad program, but definitely encourage you to do that if you can't do this one.
Nice. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. Any questions coming up about the application process or funding for the program, or any logistical questions or?
I may poke Jason and Brian here with a couple questions, because maybe the students
Sure.
haven't thought about some things. In terms of cost of living, how would you compare it to Chapel Hill, for instance, going out and getting lunch, coffees, things like that?
Yeah, so I think Jason's gonna have a different answer than I'm gonna have, because Jason every day went to this one sandwich shop. So you could do it the Jason way and get a $2 sandwich every day, and you'd probably spend almost no money on food. I personally really like to get seafood and kind of see what the experience is like there. But even then, like compared to Chapel Hill, like eating out, it's not even close. Like you could get like a really nice like fish dinner for like $10. Or you could just like go out and go to a restaurant, you know, have a drink and whatever, and you're not spending more than $20. And I'm from New York City, so like not even close to that. And then as far as the flight, I was able to fly out of New York City, and I'm sure you could do the same in Charlotte. And it was less than I think it was less than $700, so a lot less than that $1,500 estimate. So definitely keep an eye out for those. Although it was a connecting flight, and I ended up being like a half day late, so definitely be wary of that as well. But yeah, it was definitely a lot cheaper, I think, than a lot of other trips as well. So super cost effective.
And also the like when we would get Airbnbs over the weekend, those were extremely cheap too, which is really awesome. It makes traveling a lot better around the country.
Great. Any other questions coming up, or? All right. Yeah, no worries. Let me just stop the recording really quick. If anybody has any more questions as well, I'll put my email address in the chat.